The Socratic Journey, answering Who am I? In the quiet chambers of our minds, a question as old as humanity itself quietly echoes, who am I? It's a question that transcends cultures, professions, and generations. It's not a simple query with a straightforward answer, like asking for one's name or job title. Instead, it is a profound and deeply personal invitation to embark on an intellectual and spiritual odyssey into the uncharted territory of our own inner selves. This is the Socratic Journey, a path of relentless self-interrogation and philosophical inquiry, inspired by the ancient Greek philosopher who believed that the greatest wisdom came from acknowledging our own ignorance. This journey is not about finding a final destination or a definitive label to pin on ourselves, but rather about the continuous process of exploration itself. For many of us, the answer to who am I has been handed down to us or shaped by external forces. We are defined by our relationships, as a son, a daughter, a parent, a friend. We are categorized by our careers, a doctor, a teacher, an artist. We are labeled by our roles in society, our past experiences, or even the expectations of others. Yet, Socrates teaches us that these are merely costumes we wear, not the core of our being. The Socratic journey begins with a courageous act of shedding these inherited identities and admitting that, at the most fundamental level, we don't truly know ourselves. This admission of ignorance is the first and most critical step towards genuine self-knowledge. The heart of the Socratic method lies in the power of inquiry. Socrates didn't lecture, he asked questions. He would engage his fellow Athenians in conversations about virtue, justice, and truth, systematically dismantling their preconceived notions until they were forced to confront the gaps in their own understanding. We must apply this same rigorous interrogation to ourselves. We must become our own relentless interrogators, asking questions like, what are my true values, and do my actions align with them? Why do I believe what I believe? And what makes me genuinely happy, and is it what I've been told should make me happy? Each question is a metaphorical chisel, chipping away at the superficial layers to reveal the raw, authentic self beneath. This process can be unsettling, even painful. As we begin to pull on the threads of our identity, we may find contradictions and paradoxes. The person we believe ourselves to be, brave, kind, and patient, might be revealed as someone who is also fearful, selfish, and impulsive in certain situations. The Socratic journey teaches us to embrace this paradox of self, recognizing that the I is not a static singular entity but a dynamic and multifaceted mosaic. The goal isn't to eliminate these contradictions but to understand and integrate them, to see the full spectrum of our being, both the light and the shadow. Moreover, the Socratic journey is not a solitary one. Our relationships with others serve as powerful mirrors, reflecting aspects of ourselves we might not see on our own. How we react to conflict, what we admire in others, and what we criticize often reveal our own insecurities, aspirations, and unresolved issues. By paying close attention to these dynamics, we can gain new insights. For example, our frustration with a friend's lack of punctuality might reveal our own deep-seated need for control, or our admiration for someone's creativity might point to a latent desire to express our own artistic side. These interactions become invaluable data points in our quest for self-knowledge. Ultimately, the Socratic journey is a continuous cycle of action and reflection. Our identity is not just a mental construct, it is shaped by the choices we make every day. By observing our actions, how we spend our time, what we pursue, and how we treat others, we can see who we truly are, not just who we think we are. This means that true self-knowledge requires us to be active participants in our own lives, not just passive observers. We must act, and then reflect on those actions, asking what they reveal about our character and our deepest motivations. In conclusion, to ask who am I is to enter a dialogue with oneself that will last a lifetime. There is no final, definitive answer waiting at the end of the road. Instead, the journey itself is the reward. It is a commitment to living a life of purpose and intention, guided by a deep and evolving understanding of our own character. The Socratic journey gives us the tools to navigate the complexities of our inner world, empowering us not with a simple answer, but with the profound wisdom to live with authenticity, integrity, and genuine self-awareness. The unexamined life. Socrates famously declared that the unexamined life is not worth living. This profound statement serves as the starting point for our Socratic journey. Before we can even begin to answer the question, who am I? We must first confront the uncomfortable truth that, for most of us, our lives have been lived in a state of uncritical acceptance. We have absorbed identities, beliefs, and values from our families, our cultures, and our societies without ever questioning their authenticity or their relevance to our true selves. We have become accustomed to wearing a mask, or perhaps a series of masks, that have been fashioned for us, rather than forging a genuine identity from within. The unexamined life is one lived on autopilot. It is a life where we follow the path of least resistance, conforming to expectations and societal norms without ever stopping to ask if this path is truly our own. We get a job because it's what's expected of us, pursue a relationship because it's what our peers are doing, or hold a certain political view because it's what we were taught. This lack of conscious inquiry creates a disconnect between who we truly are and how we present ourselves to the world. We may feel a vague sense of unease or a gnawing emptiness, a feeling that something is missing, but we rarely trace this feeling back to its source, the absence of self-knowledge. To begin the Socratic journey, we must first have the courage to admit this state of intellectual and spiritual slumber. It is an act of profound vulnerability to say, "I don't truly know myself." This admission, however, is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of immense strength. It is the first step toward reclaiming our own narrative. It means we are no longer content to be a mere reflection of the world around us. We are ready to take responsibility for our own identity, to become the architects of our own character rather than the passive recipients of a prefabricated self. Think of the unexamined life as a vast, cluttered attic filled with inherited furniture, dusty heirlooms, and objects we never chose but simply accumulated over time. The Socratic journey is the process of entering that attic with a flashlight, dusting off each item, and asking, "Does this belong to me? Does this truly serve a purpose in my life?" We must scrutinize our deepest held beliefs, our ingrained habits, and even our most cherished memories. We must ask if they are truly ours or if they were merely placed there by others. This is a difficult and often uncomfortable process, as we may find that some of our most foundational beliefs are not as solid as we thought. The dangers of the unexamined life are manifold. When we don't know who we are more susceptible to manipulation, both from external forces and from our own inner biases. We can be swayed by the opinions of others, fall victim to trends, and make decisions that go against our true nature. We may find ourselves in careers that leave us unfulfilled, in relationships that are not authentic, and pursuing goals that don't bring us genuine happiness. The unexamined life leads to a kind of spiritual and emotional stasis, where we are simply existing rather than truly living. This chapter, therefore, is an invitation to pause. It is a call to step off the treadmill of daily life and to look inward. It is a challenge to reject the comfort of superficial labels, "I am a good person," "I am successful," "I am a failure," and to start asking the deeper, more uncomfortable questions. The goal is not to arrive at a neat and tidy answer, but to cultivate a state of continuous inquiry about ourselves. We must learn to become our own best critics, our own most insightful observers, and our own most trusted guides. By embarking on this first step, we begin to lay the foundation for everything that follows. We move from a state of passive acceptance to one of active exploration. The Socratic journey doesn't offer easy answers, but it does offer something far more valuable, the opportunity to live a life that is truly and authentically our own. To examine our lives is to find the courage to be ourselves, not a mirror of what the world expects us to be. It is the first and most critical step towards unlocking our true potential and discovering the person we were always meant to become. The elicitation of ignorance. The Socratic journey, having begun with the difficult admission of an unexamined life, now moves to its core philosophical principle, the elicitation of ignorance. Socrates famously walked the streets of Athens, not to proclaim his wisdom, but to demonstrate that true wisdom lies in knowing the limits of one's own knowledge. He found that those who claimed to know the most were often the ones who understood the least, while he, who admitted he knew nothing, was considered the wisest. This is the radical starting point we must embrace. To truly understand who I am, we must first act as if we have no preconceived notions about ourselves. This is not a performative act of humility, it is a genuine intellectual exercise. It means we must consciously suspend all of our self-definitions and labels. We must stop identifying as the responsible one, the creative one, or the funny one. Instead, we must approach ourselves with a beginner's mind, a fresh slate. By doing this, we create the necessary space to discover our authentic selves. The goal is to move beyond the superficial and the convenient, and to confront the profound gaps in our self-understanding. The practical application of this principle is to turn the Socratic method inward. We must become our own relentless interrogators, questioning our most deeply held beliefs and assumptions about ourselves. Instead of accepting, "I am a kind person," we must ask, "What does it mean for me to be kind? When have I been unkind? What are the limits of my kindness?" This process of systematic inquiry dismantles our certainties and reveals the complexities and contradictions that lie beneath. It forces us to confront the fact that our identity is not a simple monolithic truth, but a complex, shifting tapestry. This method, when applied to our inner world, can be profoundly unsettling. It challenges the very foundation of our ego, which often relies on a stable and positive self-image. We may discover that we are not as brave as we thought, or that our generosity is often motivated by a desire for approval. These uncomfortable truths are not failures, they are breakthroughs. They are the initial sparks of genuine self-awareness. By identifying these areas of ignorance, we create the potential for growth and real change. The elicitation of ignorance is about mapping out the territory we still need to explore. The beauty of this Socratic approach is that it transforms our weaknesses into strengths. Our ignorance becomes our greatest asset, as it fuels our curiosity and our drive to learn. When we admit we don't know why we react a certain way or why we feel a particular emotion, we are freed from the obligation of having to be right. We are then able to approach ourselves with a sense of wonder and open-mindedness, much like a scientist studying a new phenomenon. This shift from certainty to curiosity is the engine of the Socratic journey. This principle also helps us to move beyond the societal definitions of a good or bad person. Instead of trying to fit into a predefined mold, we begin to define our own terms. We ask, "What is my personal definition of success?" Or "What does a life of integrity look like for me?" The answers won't be found in a book or from a guru. They will be revealed through the process of honest self-reflection and questioning. The elicitation of ignorance empowers us to be the authors of our own definitions, freeing us from the pressure to conform to someone else's idea of who we should be. In essence, this chapter is about embracing the intellectual humility that is the hallmark of a true seeker. It teaches us that the path to knowledge begins with the admission that we do not already possess it. By consciously and systematically questioning our own beliefs and assumptions, we begin to see ourselves not as a finished product, but as a work in progress. It is through this act of eliciting our own ignorance that we can finally see ourselves clearly, unburdened by the illusions and comfortable fictions we have created. The scaffolding of beliefs. Having embraced our ignorance, we are now ready to confront the very structure of our identity. Our sense of self is not a single solid entity, rather it is a complex scaffolding of beliefs. These are the silent, often unexamined assumptions we hold about the world, about others, and most importantly, about ourselves. They are the rules we live by, the truths we hold to be self-evident, and the foundations upon which our thoughts and actions are built. A successful Socratic journey requires us to systematically dismantle the scaffolding, not to tear it down completely, but to inspect each beam and plank for soundness and authenticity. Think of our beliefs as the blueprints for our lives. Some of these blueprints were drawn by our parents, others by our teachers, and many more by the relentless messaging of society. For example, we might hold the belief that success equals wealth, that showing emotion is a sign of weakness, or that I am not a creative person. We rarely, if ever, stop to question where these ideas came from. We simply accept them as true and build our lives accordingly. This can lead to a fundamental misalignment between our actions and our true desires, leaving us feeling hollow or unfulfilled. The Socratic Method provides the perfect tool for this deconstruction. We must become like a philosophical auditor, examining each belief with a critical eye. When we encounter a belief like, "I am a bad public speaker," we shouldn't just accept it. We should ask a series of probing questions. What is the evidence for this belief? Was it a single bad experience, or a pattern? Is this a truth about me, or simply a fear I've been carrying? By forcing our beliefs to stand up to the rigors of evidence and logic, we begin to see which ones are solid and which are mere illusions. This process can be liberating, but also disorienting. As we start to question the very pillars of our identity, we may feel a sense of instability. The I we have known begins to feel less certain. This is a natural and necessary part of the journey. It is only by exposing the flimsy beliefs that we can replace them with something stronger, truths that we have personally vetted and affirmed. For example, by questioning the belief that I am not creative, we might discover that our creativity simply manifests in ways we never considered, such as in problem solving or in the way we organize our lives. The most dangerous beliefs are often the ones we don't even know we have. These are the unconscious biases and assumptions that dictate our reactions and shape our worldview. The Socratic journey helps us bring these to the surface. By paying attention to our knee-jerk reactions, our immediate judgments, and the stories we tell ourselves about why things happen, we can unearth these hidden beliefs. For instance, our frustration with a person who moves slowly might stem from an unconscious belief that efficiency is the highest virtue, a belief we may have never consciously examined. This chapter is a call to intellectual honesty. It asks us to confront the possibility that the very foundation of our identity might be built on borrowed beliefs. It is a challenge to take ownership of our own minds and to actively choose what we believe. We must become the editors of our own internal narrative, carefully deciding which ideas and values to keep and which to discard. The scaffolding of beliefs is not meant to be a prison, it is meant to be a framework for a life well lived. By the end of this stage, we will not have a perfectly constructed new identity. Instead, we will have a clearer understanding of what is real and what is not. We will have a foundation built on personal truth, not inherited dogma. The Socratic journey, in this sense, is an act of intellectual and spiritual hygiene. It is about cleaning out the clutter and creating space for a more authentic self to emerge. We learn that answering "Who am I?" is less about finding the right words and more about building a life based on beliefs we can truly call our own. The paradox of self. Having embarked on the challenging task of examining our beliefs, we now come face to face with the most profound revelation of the Socratic journey, the paradox of self. Socrates discovered that the more he learned, the more he understood how little he knew. This same principle holds true for our inner world. The deeper we delve into ourselves, the more we find not a simple neat answer, but a complex tapestry woven with contradictions and inconsistencies. We are not a single solid entity, but a dynamic, ever-changing mosaic of conflicting emotions, thoughts, and traits. This paradox can be unsettling because we are taught to seek consistency. Society often rewards people who are predictable and stable. Yet, the Socratic journey reveals that our true identity is inherently paradoxical. We can be both brave in one situation and paralyzed by fear in another. We can be incredibly generous with our time and resources, yet selfish in our desire for recognition. We can be fiercely patient with a loved one, but lose our temper at a stranger's minor inconvenience. These are not flaws in our character, they are fundamental truths of the human condition. The unexamined life attempts to ignore this paradox. It tries to force us into a neat box: I am a kind person, and therefore, any act of unkindness is rationalized or pushed away as an anomaly. The Socratic journey, however, teaches us to embrace these contradictions. It asks us to look at both our virtuous and our less than virtuous traits and to recognize them as equally a part of who we are. The goal is not to eliminate the bad parts, but to understand them, to see how they interact with our good parts, and to integrate them into a more complete and honest self-portrait. Embracing this paradox is an act of intellectual and emotional maturity. It requires us to move beyond a simplistic black and white view of ourselves and to see the full spectrum of our being. This is a crucial step towards genuine self-acceptance. When we can acknowledge that we are capable of both great love and great anger, great courage and great fear, we stop fighting against ourselves. This internal peace allows us to make more conscious choices. Instead of pretending to be someone we're not, we can choose which part of our complex self to lead with in any given moment. Furthermore, the paradox of self helps us develop greater empathy for others. When we understand that we ourselves are full of contradictions, we are less likely to make harsh, definitive judgments about other people. We can see that a person who acts selfishly might also be capable of immense generosity, or that someone who appears confident might be battling deep insecurities. The Socratic insight into our own paradoxical nature allows us to see the humanity in everyone, moving beyond labels and toward a deeper understanding of the complexities that define us all. This chapter is a call to end the war with ourselves. It is an invitation to stop trying to be a perfect, consistent version of who we think we should be. Instead, we are encouraged to be a flawed, contradictory, and deeply authentic version of who we truly are. This is not an excuse for bad behavior, but a foundation for growth. When we are honest about our full selves, our strengths and our weaknesses, we are in a much better position to work on the areas that need improvement, without the added burden of self-deception. Ultimately, the paradox of self is the engine of the Socratic journey. It ensures that our quest for self-knowledge is unending. Just when we think we have a clear picture, a new contradiction will emerge, challenging us to look deeper. The true reward is not a final answer, but the profound wisdom that comes from navigating this inner labyrinth. By embracing our contradictions, we move beyond the superficial and enter a state of continuous evolution, becoming a more honest, compassionate, and integrated person. The mirror of relationships. The Socratic journey, while an inward quest, is not a solitary one. In our search for who I am, our relationships with others serve as an indispensable tool, acting as powerful mirrors that reflect parts of ourselves we might not see on our own. It is in the dynamic space between ourselves and others that our character is truly revealed. The way we react to a friend's success, what we admire in a partner, or what we criticize in a colleague are not just observations about them. They are profound insights into our own minds, values, and insecurities. This mirroring effect operates on several levels. First, our reactions to other people's behavior can expose our own unresolved issues. For example, if we become disproportionately angry when a friend cancels plans at the last minute, that anger may not just be about their action. It could reflect our own deep-seated anxiety about a lack of control or a fear of not being valued. The person is simply holding up a mirror to a part of ourselves that we may have buried or ignored. By paying close attention to these emotional triggers, we can begin to understand their source within our own psyche. Furthermore, what we admire in others often reveals our own latent desires and aspirations. When we are drawn to someone's creativity, courage, or resilience, we are likely seeing a quality we wish to cultivate in ourselves. This admiration is not just a passive feeling, it is a signal from our own inner compass, pointing towards a direction of personal growth. The Socratic journey encourages us to move beyond simple admiration and to ask, what does this person's quality reveal about my own potential? This transforms our relationships from a passive experience into a powerful catalyst for self-discovery. Conversely, what we find most irritating or frustrating in others can also serve as a mirror. The traits we criticize most harshly often represent something we dislike in ourselves, or a part of ourselves we are trying to suppress. This is a classic psychological projection. The person who constantly criticizes a colleague for being disorganized may, in fact, be struggling with a secret fear of their own chaos. By honestly examining our criticisms, we can gain invaluable insight into our own shadow self, the parts of our personality we are least willing to admit to. The Socratic journey, therefore, demands that we become active observers of our relationships. It's not enough to simply exist within them, we must reflect on them. We must ask questions like, what patterns do I see in my interactions with others? How do I show up in moments of conflict versus moments of joy? What do my friendships and partnerships say about my own self-worth? Each answer provides a piece of the puzzle, a reflection that helps us build a more complete picture of who we are. This process of reflection transforms our relationships from mere social connections into philosophical laboratories for self-knowledge. Our interactions become a constant source of data about our own character. We learn that true self-knowledge cannot be achieved in isolation. It is through the continuous, messy, and complex dance of human connection that we see ourselves most clearly. The feedback, both verbal and non-verbal, that we receive from others is an essential part of the Socratic dialogue with ourselves. Ultimately, Chapter 5 teaches us that we are not islands. We are interconnected beings, and our identity is not formed in a vacuum. The mirrors of our relationships show us both our virtues and our flaws, our aspirations and our fears. By embracing this reflection, we move closer to a profound understanding of who we are, not as an isolated individual, but as a being woven into the rich and complex tapestry of human experience. Action and reflection. The Socratic journey is not a purely intellectual exercise to be conducted in a quiet room, it is a philosophy to be lived. This is the core principle of Chapter 6, Action and Reflection. While the previous chapters have focused on the crucial process of self-interrogation and deconstruction of beliefs, this one emphasizes that our identity is not a static mental construct. It is actively shaped by the choices we make and the actions we take every single day. We are what we do. The most profound insights into who I am are not found in our thoughts alone, but in the observation and contemplation of our own behavior. Think of action as the raw data of our lives. Every decision, big or small, from how we spend our free time to how we react to a difficult conversation at work, is a data point. The unexamined life is a life where this data is ignored. We go through the motions without ever asking what our actions reveal about our character, our values, or our desires. For example, a person might believe they value honesty above all else, but their actions, telling a white lie to avoid conflict, reveal a deeper value, the avoidance of discomfort. The Socratic journey demands that we close this gap between our stated beliefs and our lived reality. The process of reflection is the critical next step. It's the moment we pause to analyze the data of our actions. This involves asking a series of probing questions. Why did I choose this over that? What motivated me to act the way I did? Did my actions align with who I aspire to be? This is where we learn to see ourselves not as we wish to be seen, but as we truly are. This honest self-observation can be difficult, as it may reveal truths we'd rather ignore. We might find that our generosity is often a bid for attention, or that our patience is simply a fear of confrontation. This continuous cycle of acting and reflecting is the engine of personal growth. When we reflect on an action and realize it was misaligned with our values, we don't just feel guilt, we gain knowledge. This knowledge then informs our future actions. For instance, if we realize our actions were driven by a fear of rejection, we can make a conscious decision to act with more courage in a similar situation in the future. The Socratic journey is about using this feedback loop to continuously refine our character and align our outer behavior with our inner self. Moreover, this chapter teaches us that self-knowledge is not a passive state, but an active pursuit. We must be willing to experiment. This might mean deliberately stepping outside our comfort zone to see how we react, or choosing to act in a way that is different from our usual patterns. For example, if we believe we are not a leader, we might choose to take the lead on a small project just to see what happens. The outcome, whether we succeed or fail, is secondary to the knowledge we gain from the experience. Our actions become a philosophical laboratory, and our lives become an ongoing experiment in self-discovery. This is also where the Socratic journey becomes deeply practical. It moves beyond abstract philosophy and grounds our quest in the tangible reality of our lives. It shows us that every mundane choice, what we eat, what we read, how we speak to others, is a moment of self-definition. By treating our actions as a constant source of information, we transform our daily routines into a rich tapestry of self-revelation. We learn that living an examined life means living with an acute awareness of our own conduct and its implications. In conclusion, Chapter 6 unites thought and deed, showing us that the answer to "Who am I?" is not just a conclusion we arrive at, but a narrative we are constantly writing. By committing to this cycle of action and reflection, we ensure that our quest for self-knowledge is an active and dynamic process. We learn that we are not defined by what we say we believe, but by what our choices reveal. The true reward is a life lived with intentionality, where every action becomes a conscious step towards a more authentic and integrated self. The elusive soul. The Socratic journey, having guided us through the layers of action, belief, and contradiction, now leads us to its most profound and mysterious destination, the concept of the elusive soul. For Socrates, the soul wasn't a religious entity in the modern sense. It was the non-physical core of our being, the seat of our character, reason, and virtue. It is the authentic self that remains after all the masks of identity have been peeled away. This chapter asks us to go beyond the observable, our beliefs and actions, and to look for the deeper essence that animates them. The question, "Who am I?" here becomes a quest for this inner harmony and goodness. Socrates believed that the primary purpose of life was the care of the soul, which he saw as the ultimate source of human excellence. This care involved living a life guided by reason and virtue, constantly striving to align our outer actions with our inner potential for good. The unexamined life, in this context, is one in which the soul is neglected. We become so preoccupied with external matters, wealth, status, and pleasure, that we lose touch with the very core of our being, leaving it in a state of chaos and discord. The Socratic journey is a rebellion against this neglect, a conscious effort to tend to our deepest self. The search for the soul is not about finding a single static thing, but about understanding our inherent capacity for virtue and wisdom. It is about recognizing that beneath our habits, fears, and ego-driven desires, there lies a fundamental self that seeks goodness, truth, and beauty. This is the part of us that feels a natural pull towards compassion, a sense of justice, and a desire for meaningful connection. The Socratic Method, by exposing our ignorance and inconsistencies, serves to clear away the clutter that obscures this inner light, allowing it to shine more brightly. This chapter asks us to look at our lives from a higher vantage point. We must ask ourselves, are my actions contributing to the health of my soul? And am I living in a way that is aligned with my deepest values? This is where the journey moves from self-awareness to self-transcendence. It's no longer just about knowing ourselves, it's about striving to become the best version of ourselves, to live up to our highest potential. The elusive soul is both what we are and what we are meant to be. The pursuit of the soul is a quiet, ongoing dialogue. It requires moments of solitude and deep introspection, where we can listen to the subtle whispers of our inner voice, free from the noise of external expectations. It is in these moments that we can distinguish between what we truly want and what we've been conditioned to want. This quiet listening is what allows us to align our personal journey with a higher sense of purpose, moving us from a life of mere existence to one of profound significance. This phase of the journey also involves a degree of trust in the inherent goodness of our own character. It's a leap of faith to believe that beneath our flaws and mistakes, there is a core self that is worth caring for and cultivating. This trust is what gives us the resilience to continue the journey, even when it reveals uncomfortable truths. We pursue self-knowledge not out of a morbid curiosity, but out of a deep and abiding love for the person we are capable of becoming. Ultimately, the elusive soul is the ultimate answer to who am I. It is not a fixed definition, but a guiding principle. It represents our potential for virtue and wisdom, the very essence that makes the examined life worth living. By dedicating ourselves to the care of this inner core, we find a purpose that transcends the transient desires of the material world. We learn that the final destination of our Socratic journey is not a label or a conclusion, but a state of being, a life lived in authentic harmony with our true soulful self. The unending question. The Socratic journey, unlike a conventional expedition, does not culminate in a final definitive answer. This is the central premise of Chapter 8, The Unending Question. Socrates understood that life is a state of perpetual change, and therefore, our understanding of ourselves can never be a finished product. The question, who am I, is not a problem to be solved, but a lifelong companion. The journey's true reward lies not in finding the answer, but in the wisdom gained from the continual process of asking. The moment we believe we have fully grasped our identity is the moment we cease to grow. This principle challenges our modern desire for quick fixes and clear conclusions. We crave a neat single-word answer to our identity, a fixed label like artist, leader, or introvert. But the Socratic journey reveals that these labels are simply temporary snapshots of an ever-evolving person. The person we were a decade ago is not the person we are today, and the person we will be a decade from now has yet to be fully realized. Our beliefs change, our values mature, and our experiences shape us in profound and unpredictable ways. The unending question is what keeps us intellectually and spiritually alive, pushing us to constantly reevaluate and adapt. The unending nature of this quest also guards against arrogance. When we admit that we don't have all the answers about ourselves, we remain open to new insights, new experiences, and new truths. This intellectual humility is a cornerstone of genuine wisdom. It prevents us from becoming dogmatic or rigid in our self-perception. Instead, it fosters a sense of wonder and curiosity about who we are becoming. It's an invitation to see ourselves as a continuous project, a work in progress, rather than a completed masterpiece. This concept is profoundly liberating. If the question is unending, it means we can never truly fail. There is no final exam to pass or a perfect score to achieve. The goal is simply to participate in the process with honesty and integrity. Every misstep, every moment of confusion, and every new discovery becomes a valuable part of the journey. The pressure to find ourselves is lifted, and in its place comes the joy of simply being on the path of self-discovery. We learn to appreciate the journey for its own sake, not just for the destination. The unending question also serves as a constant guide. It acts as a compass, always pointing us back to the core of our being. When faced with a difficult choice, we can ask, what does this decision say about who I am? When we feel a sense of unease or conflict, we can turn inward and ask, what part of me is in disharmony? This persistent inquiry ensures that we are living a life of purpose and intention, rather than simply reacting to external events. It keeps us anchored in our own truth, even when the world around us is in flux. Ultimately, the Socratic journey concludes where it began, with a question. The difference is that now we approach it with a greater depth of understanding and a more profound appreciation for its complexity. We have learned that the I is not a noun, but a verb, a continuous state of becoming. The journey has not given us a fixed identity, but a more reliable map for navigating the terrain of our inner world. We are no longer afraid of the question, we welcome it as a sign that we are truly alive and growing. The final reward of the Socratic journey is not a label, but a disposition. It is the commitment to live a life of continuous inquiry, to treat every day as an opportunity for self-discovery, and to embrace the beautiful, messy, and unending process of becoming. The question, who am I, remains, not as a source of anxiety, but as a lifelong call to live a more thoughtful, authentic, and conscious life. Conclusion. To ask who am I is to enter the labyrinth of self-knowledge with Socrates as our guide. This journey is not a race with a finish line, but a commitment to an examined life, a relentless pursuit of truth within our own hearts and minds. We have learned that the answer isn't a single word or a fixed identity, but a vibrant and ever-evolving narrative that we are continuously writing. The journey's profound reward is not in finding a final answer, but in the deep wisdom gained from the process itself, a wisdom that empowers us to live with authenticity, purpose, and integrity. We began by shedding the unexamined life, that state of uncritical acceptance where our identity was a collection of inherited labels. We learned that true self-knowledge starts with an act of courage, the willingness to admit our own ignorance. We then used the Socratic Method to systematically question our beliefs, exposing the gaps in our understanding and forcing ourselves to confront the uncomfortable reality that we don't know ourselves as well as we thought. This deconstruction, while challenging, was the necessary first step towards building a more authentic foundation for our lives. As we moved through the journey, we came to terms with the paradox of self, the realization that we are not a monolithic being, but a complex mosaic of contradictions. We learned to embrace both our virtues and our flaws, understanding that our courage and our fear, our generosity and our selfishness, are all parts of a single multifaceted human being. This acceptance allowed us to end the internal conflict and begin living with a more honest and integrated sense of self. The mirrors of our relationships taught us that self-knowledge is not a solitary pursuit. It is through our interactions with others that we see reflections of our own hidden traits, both the ones we admire and the ones we criticize. Our relationships became a philosophical laboratory, providing us with invaluable data and feedback that helped us see ourselves more clearly than ever before. This showed us that our identity is not formed in a vacuum, but is intrinsically linked to our connections with others. We then turned to the crucial cycle of action and reflection, recognizing that our identity is not just a mental construct, but something we actively create with every choice we make. We learned to treat our daily lives as a source of information, using our actions as a guide to what we truly value. This grounded our philosophical quest in reality, transforming every mundane decision into a moment of self-discovery and every mistake into an opportunity for growth. Ultimately, the Socratic journey led us to the contemplation of the elusive soul, the inner core of our character and virtue. This final stage of the quest is about more than just knowing ourselves, it's about striving to become the best version of ourselves. It is a commitment to living in alignment with our deepest values, to tending to our inner life, and to nurturing our potential for goodness, truth, and wisdom. This is the ultimate purpose of the examined life. The journey's end is not an answer, but a new beginning. The question, who am I, remains unending, and this is its greatest gift. It ensures that our lives will never be static. It guarantees a future of continuous learning, growth, and discovery. The Socratic journey has provided us not with a fixed identity, but with the tools to navigate a life of authenticity and purpose. It is a reminder that the most important dialogue we will ever have is the one we have with ourselves.